Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Mindgasms podcast. I'm talking to my friend David Tortos again today, who is around the Toronto area still and doing. He's an engineering student and he's a coder and does a lot with that stuff too. And we talked a few times before about lots of interesting topics like philosophy, mythology, politics, and all sorts of different and books and all sorts of different subjects like that. So, yeah, why don't you kind of introduce yourself there, David, and then we can just talk about anything really today.
All right. Yeah, so I'm David, and this is my third. I think this is my third podcast that we're doing.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm an engineering student, third year, and yeah, I'm just living in Toronto right now.
Okay.
Fine. Done.
All right. So, you see any other good movies lately? Like I know you before the last time we talked, we were talking about that movie Mother that came out because you recommended it to me and
Oh
how it was like a Christian allegory.
yeah, yeah,
You
yeah. No,
see?
I haven't seen lately any new movies.
No?
Honestly, I can't remember. No, I was gonna go
Okay.
on Friday, but I don't
Sorry?
know anything. I was gonna go on Friday to see what we could see.
What?
Actually, TIFF, the Toronto International Film Festival, is going on here in Toronto.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I wanna go check out. I don't know if you've heard of it. I don't know if it's because it's in Toronto, so like I hear about it every year. But like I don't know if you hear about it living in Fort McMurray.
Yeah, I've heard about the Toronto Film Festival. Isn't it like a huge kind of global film festival? I mean like for the whole world, kind of like the Sundance Film Festival, or is that
Yeah,
or
kind
is
of.
yeah?
Yeah, it's like they have like movies from producers from like all over the world, and they come, and a lot of famous people show up also, like, from Hollywood, and they do screenings. I think they have like 100 and something movies this year. It's like a week
Oh
long.
wow.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of movies.
Yeah, cool. So are there a few in particular that you want to check out?
I don't remember any of them by name, but like in the radio, and they do have like every once in a while they kind of like give kind of like what's it called, like previews of it, or not previews, but like what do you call it? Like they describe it and they interview the writers and everything.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So they do like a Q&A with the filmmakers?
yeah,
Oh, okay. That's pretty cool. I would love to go to
yeah. I
something
want to
like
go.
that for some of my favorite movies and some of my favorite directors in particular, I bet.
Mhm. Actually, speaking of that, I don't think I told you. Like a few, maybe like 2 weeks ago, they were actually shooting a movie, not related to TIFF, but they were shooting a movie like 2 minute walk from my house.
Oh, really?
Steven Spielberg movie.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
What movie was
it's
it?
called In the Tall Grass.
Oh,
It's based on
okay.
a book on that was like made in 2015.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I guess a lot of big American films shoot in places like Toronto and Vancouver because those are like the big film cities in Canada, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why my brother lives in Vancouver because it's one of those two places, and I guess he wanted to live there instead of in Toronto. And I think I've told you before about how he lives in Vancouver with his girlfriend, and he got a few major TV parts recently. He got uh, I think a 3 episode small recurring role on the newest season of My Zombie, and He also got a small role in an episode of the newest season of the X-Files. I
Oh yeah,
think
you told me. I remember. That's so
yeah,
cool.
yeah, he played like
Yeah.
I think he played a surgeon in a cannibal cult in his X-Files episode, and he played an anti-zombie gang member in iZombie, and I mean, I'm spoiling this for anyone who hasn't seen it, but he has an awesome epic death and gets ripped apart by zombies.
Yeah, that sounds so cool. Like he's that's a pretty interesting career he's got going.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that'd
And
be so awesome.
it's really hard too. Like we talk about that sometimes, like how hard it is for an artist in general, because it reminds me of how hard it is for me to make it as a writer too.
Yeah,
Like especially with my novel and stuff like that. Like more and more people care about it, but it's a slow process, and you have to work really hard to get noticed, and you have to keep maintaining that so you can keep getting like a little more attention gradually here and there.
yeah, yeah. It's definitely a hard industry. It's competitive.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Would you say that in engineering that especially the type of engineering that you're doing, there are better future job prospects for that?
Yeah, I think yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I guess even in the like society we live now, everything is technology and like engineers are required everywhere. But yeah, there's pretty good demand for it.
That's cool, man. We were
Yeah.
talking actually on the last mixed mental arts chat I was on, we were talking about AI, and I think we might have talked about this before already, but we were talking about how people kind of have these two parallel mythologies about AI. Like there's the doomsday ideology by people like Nick Bostrom, who's a philosopher who wrote the book Super Intelligence, and Sam Harris is a huge fan of it, and it's all about like it's like the way Hunter was talking about it on our mixed mental arts chat was that it's the Skynet mentality. It's like
Yeah.
you can build the AI, but it will be too smart, and you think it won't be smart, but then it will be too smart for you, and it will take over the world and kill us all. And then
Yeah.
there's the other parallel mythology, the singularity mythology that people who I love watching his videos, like Jason Silva, are big proponents of, and obviously Ray Kurzweil was the major proponent of it first. He has like a whole bunch of different patents, and he's made a lot of predictions about technology that turned out to be correct. But he still has this ideology that Jason Silva talks about, where um, it's like, dude, AI is going to save us all, and it's going to unite us all as a planet and save the world, man. So, so it's two like really obviously mythological perspectives, right?
Yeah. But I don't think I would call them mythological. Like some of them, just because I guess the whole thing is really misunderstood by a lot of people because you see in sci-fi movies, and then when you see something that comes out of a sci-fi movie, people are like, oh no, that's just sci-fi. It doesn't know what's gonna happen. But it's the other way around. Like sci-fi movies are based on people who predicted that something like that was gonna happen. So that was
Yeah.
such a crazy idea. People started making movies about it. But like it's yeah, it's based mainly. I guess it's based mainly in the uncertainty of it, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of what I was saying when we were talking about this before too. Like, um, it's a lot more attractive to people to say or see prophets saying something like, beware of AI, it's going to kill us all. Or a prophet who says something like, AI will be the best and it will save us all. And it's not as attractive to people to see someone say, hey, guess what, guys? Maybe this bad outcome will happen. Maybe this good one will happen. It's really hard to say for sure. But I mean,
Mhm.
like, I was talking to my friend Alex Bello, who works with some people who work on machine learning, and they always seem to say that all this worry about AI is kind of paranoid, or kind of paranoia rather, and it's very, very unlikely that it's going to like destroy the planet or anything like that. But I think it seems equally unlikely that it's going to save us all too. It's probably
I
going to
guess
be like somewhere in
either of
between
them are
those things.
like both possibilities are really uncertain. Like we don't know what the hell's gonna happen. That's the bottom line.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
because
for
like it's
sure.
funny. I've been getting into AI a lot. I've done a lot of research and stuff, and the general impression I'm getting out of it is like AI is nothing like the human brain. It's totally different. Like the way it works, the brain is just like layers of different like factions doing different things. And its complexity is like you can't compare it. It's like AI is more, I guess, more specific to any given task. But yeah, like anything when it comes to technology, like as technology evolves, things get better. And what we do see in AI is like things are becoming more generalized. So that's like the holy grail of AI is a general AI that basically an algorithm that you can give it almost any task and it can master it. Kind of like a human. Like humans could drive, or they can learn to play guitar, or they can learn how to be like I don't know, lawyer or whatever. Doesn't matter.
Yeah,
But like you can make any human do any of those things, right? But like AI, if you wanted to learn to drive a car, you have to actually engineer the architecture specifically for that.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think they call like people who study AI, they call it like general level intelligence, or general level human intelligence or something, where the like AIs will reach the point at about the same level of humans in terms of being able to be adaptable to different tasks like human brains are, like you were talking about. And then I
Mhm.
think the projection in the future is this idea anyway, it might just be a theory, that AIs can become self-learning machines and exceed human intelligence. But I think that's an important point too, that I was hearing about before too. Like the the human brain is very different from an AI, especially at this point. Like as you were saying, once you start to learn about how it actually works, the like the way that AI is designed is completely different from the human brain. And people sometimes seem to forget too, like exactly what you're talking about, how fucking complex the human brain is. Like there are all these parts of it that do perform different tasks, and then like certain, and it's not necessarily the case that like one portion of the brain will perform all these activities, or even one gene is associated with this one particular function. Like multiple genes are adapted for different functions depending on the environment of the organism, and they're and a lot of different parts of the brain work together to perform different actions too. And there are all these different factors, there are all these multiple different factors that go into it too, obviously, right? So
Yeah.
that's it's a lot more difficult than people think, to say the least,
Yeah.
right?
It's true. It's like it's also very different in the sense that like um the AI it's an algorithm. It's just like it's literally an optimization algorithm. So like you have a parameter and you just have to get that parameter as low as possible. It's so like linear almost if you think of it that way. But if you look at the human mind, it's like you just have to look inside yourself to realize just how crazy it is. You can think, you can when you go to sleep, you can dream, and sometimes your dreams have reflections of like what's going on in your life. Like all these crazy things are just like it's so like more more complicated than anything that we've made so far.
Yeah,
So if we ever can imagine a world where AI would be as smart as humans, I think that would like there's a lot of like there's a big gap between that point and where we are.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And also, like, I think I've heard both neuroscientists and even astrophysicists say that the human brain is the most complex known thing in the universe. Like, of all the things in the universe that we have studied, the human brain is apparently the most complex. And that's saying a lot. So trying to mimic that is going to be like, I think it's hard to even imagine, especially for someone like me who doesn't know much about the details of the programming angle of it, like how difficult that's going to be. And I like what you said there about machine learning being linear too, and the, you know, what people say before about technology in general, like, which is Moore's law, right? So it's something like the number of integrated circuits on a
From Moore's
specific,
law.
yeah, on a specific
Oh,
part of the machine, it doubles every 18 months. So like
yeah.
every year
Number
and
of
a half.
transistors doubles every
Yeah,
18
the
months
number of transistors on an
in the
integrated
CPU.
circuit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it gets twice as complex every year and a half or something, I think.
Hmm.
And I think that I was watching a video about this physicist Michio Kaku, who he was talking about how apparently Moore's law, it's expected to drop off, I think sometime within the next 50 years or so, or at least plateau, because we're seeing all this rapid increase in the complexity of technology right now, but once you reach a certain point, like, you have to completely redesign the way the operating system works to be able to make it more complex, like, just based on how much processing power you can actually put into a machine. And then people talk about like nanotechnology and stuff like that, for example. But other people I've talked to who have worked in these realms too, like my friend Ladan Diracek, who's traveled all over the world, and I think he's actually working on neural implants right now. He
Really?
was he was talking he was saying that nanotechnology apparently won't be like this major world changing thing that a lot of people say it's going to be. So I
A lot
think
of
that's all
technology gets hyped like
interesting.
that.
Sorry?
A lot of technology gets hyped because it has a lot of promise, and then it kind of like is this bubble, and then it just kind of like it doesn't deliver.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, it's like even
yeah,
like the carbon nanotube when it was invented, like everyone's cool, it's gonna change the world. Like, it's gonna make room temperature superconductor, and it's gonna make like space elevators and all these things. But yeah, nobody found out how to make enough of them to do anything useful, or to even overcome some of the, like, there was like, oh, if we can only overcome this one little problem, then we could have all these things with it. But nobody ever figured out how to overcome that one problem, and they think it's like impossible. But that happens a lot in
okay.
technology. Like, that's why it's always good to take, like, whenever there's a big deal that comes out, like, you take it with a grain of salt. Even same thing with AI, right?
Yeah,
You gotta make sure you don't overhype it, and sometimes it doesn't really like deliver the way you expect it to.
yeah. Yeah, for sure, man. And that reminds me of what you were talking about earlier in terms of science fiction. I think it's kind of like a constant two-way feedback relationship in a way between science fiction and reality. Like
Yeah,
like
exactly.
it's kind of like what you said, in a way that science fiction inspires people to design real things in the real world. And a lot of the time that does happen. People get their ideas from science fiction and then design this amazing technology that they've seen in awesome science fiction films. And then I think it's also the case that reality inspires the science fiction ideas too. Like, there are lots of movies within the few past couple of years or so that are just awesome science fiction movies about AI, and awesome just often just science fiction TV shows and stuff like that in general too. And I think it's almost like inevitable for them to inform each other because they're both part of the same world, right?
Yeah, you could see it as like, I mean, most people, like when you normally think of like science fiction, it's like entertainment or whatever, but when you think of it, it's really a window into people's imaginations, and that's really the engine behind innovation itself. Our imagination. We figure out how to make these technologies and everything, right?
Yeah, for sure, man. I like the way you said that. It's like
Like they're both part of their imagination. They're
yeah.
just kind of like manifested differently.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. They're both part of our imagination, but manifested differently. And then like with AI, obviously, it's more of like seeing what you can actually design in the real world. And then with science fiction, it's kind of more about theorizing what could possibly happen in the most interesting ways. So that's why I think it can lead to the more like ideological or mythological perspectives, like for example, like I mentioned, the Skynet perspective or the singularity perspective, because it's a lot more interesting to see a movie or a TV show about how AI will either destroy everything or it'll save the human race, right?
Yeah, yeah. I don't know what do you think, in your opinion, like it's one of the most realistic movies in terms of like sci-fi movies in terms of what might happen.
Oh wow. See, I'm not really sure because the ones that I like the most, like Ex Machina,
Mhm.
that one is probably, it seems like it's a fairly unrealistic interpretation of what might happen in the future. But man, I don't know. I'd have to think about that. What do you think seems like more realistic
Hmm.
interpretations?
I thought of most that like one thing. I highly doubt this will actually happen. I guess not, but like one thing about the Matrix in particular that I've always thought is that if we really teach uh, a system that like, oh, this is your task, you have to make humans as like smart as, or not smart, but like as happy as or maximize their welfare, basically. Like how do you measure welfare? How happy you are and how long you live, all these factors, right?
Yeah.
So there's these theories where if you get a computer to think about that, it's probably gonna figure out that the best way to make you as happy as possible is like keep you all hopped up on drugs or something, or connect you to the matrix. That's the whole where the whole analogy comes from. So if you're in this artificial kind of like utopia that was created by something that was told to make sure that these people are as happy as possible, right? That's probably the conclusion it's gonna end up coming to.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, I
always
love
thought that when I watched Matrix and like,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I love that. I mean, you know that I fucking love The Matrix, and even though I don't like the sequels as quite as much as the first one, the Matrix Reloaded and Revisited, just because I don't think the execution is quite as good, I still watch all three of them all the time because I think as we've talked about before, it's just like if you watch the first one, you get pieces of it, and if you've seen the other two movies, you can see the more complex mythology within it. But if you just watch the first one as a standalone, it seems like I think yeah, we were talking last time about how I watched the philosopher commentary on the first Matrix movie, and they were talking about how
well,
if
I
you just
think I
look at
heard of that. That's
yeah,
so
if you
good.
just look at the first movie on its own, it seems like a kind of dualistic good versus evil mythological underlying story in terms of like the philosophy and mythology of it. But if you look at all three of the films together, it's a much more complex mythology. Like I think we've talked about before about how the philosophers, and I've gotten these ideas from lots of other places too, talk about how it's kind of a story of Gnostic Christianity in one way, which is more of like
Yeah,
you could say it's more it's has similarities to Taoism or Taoism and Buddhism and obviously because Gnostic Christianity is kind of more of a pagan version of Christianity, so it's more about like instead of Neo being the enlightened one and he is the good guy and Agent Smith is the good guy, they the or I think the Oracle talks at one point about how she's we learn in one of the movies that she's a program, but she's a program who was put into the Matrix program by the architect to unbalance the mathematical equation. And the architect, who is basically God, he wants to balance the mathematical equation that is the Matrix, but he designed a program to unbalance his mathematical equation. So he figured out that there has to be some chaos to make the mathematical reality that humans want to experience work. And then I think the Oracle also talks in the second and third movies about how basically Neo and Smith are they're the good and the bad, but they both have to exist to balance out the equation too. So she also wants to balance it in a way. And like for example, in the first movie with Neo, he he kills Agent Smith by becoming absorbed into himself, and then Agent Smith basically comes back to life or is resurrected or something in the second movie because the equation is unbalanced and it needs to be balanced with the good and the evil. But yeah, I said a lot just there.
Yeah, I think so too. Like I think in the Matrix they tend to blend a lot of philosophical concepts from different religions because like you're saying you see Christianity, you see Taoism, you see Buddhism, and even like all they talk a lot about. They don't just represent it with all these like concepts of the like plot plot thing like parts of the plot, but they also talk about it a lot, like the
Yeah.
philosophical aspects. I was like in the game. I guess most people haven't played the game, but I think it was cool. Is it one of the games that was made where it was where you play as Ghost and Niobe, which is
Oh
made
yeah,
by
that was Enter the Matrix, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I played that one.
Yeah, I love that game. That was a fun game. But like it was made by Warner Brothers by it wasn't licensed. It was actually the original producers, and they did it. They made that game in conjunction with the second movie.
Right.
So if you look at play the movie and watch the game, they kind of line up like the stories. What you don't get in one, you get in the other, like story wise. They kind
Yeah,
of
I think it's like a
complement.
it's kind of like the backstory for Ghost and Niobe during
Yeah,
the
exactly.
second movie, right?
Yeah, the second one.
Yeah.
But like they do talk a lot about uh a lot of things that I always found interesting. I can't really think of them in detail, but very philosophical, deep like
Yeah.
concept to think about.
Yeah, and like since you brought up the Enter the Matrix game, there's so many different things involved with the Matrix that it's like the Wachowski brothers created their own mythology about it, really. Like there's the movie
Okay.
trilogy, there's the Enter the Matrix game, there's also the Path of Neo game, which is also really fun and it kind of goes through the story of the three movies, but changes some parts of it to work better for being fun for someone playing in a game. But then there's also the Animatrix, which gives you like a lot of prequels and side stories that explain some of what led to the Matrix and some of what happens during and after the story too. And I like you made me think about too about how there's a really interesting in terms of mythology, there's a cycle of birth, life, death, and war and peace, and the world starting and the world ending that we find out at the end of the third movie too. So it's like the Oracle at the end of the third movie. She's no, wait, no, it's the architect who is the God figure. he's talking to the Oracle at the end of the third movie. He says, "How long do you think this peace will last?" And she says, "As long as it can." So that's I think that seems like the idea to me. So Neo wanted to achieve peace between the humans and the machines, but it might only be temporary. And it's like there has to end up being more conflict eventually, especially since you can even go back to the first movie in kind of a cycle-like fashion and see Smith talking about what well, kind of like alluding to what the architect talks about with Neo in the second movie, where he's talking about how the first Matrix was a utopia, and he went through, I think, 5 versions of the Matrix before the one that Neo is a part of, before he figured out how to do it properly. And maybe then the first couple versions or something like that were utopias, but humans couldn't live in that one, so they needed some chaos. I thought that was so fascinating, right?
Yeah, it's a really cool idea.
Yeah.
And it kind of reminds me of another similar idea that I've thought of that in terms of the chaos thing. But it's like our lives, like our existence, is owed to like suffering in a way. So like it's kind of like that. Like everyone, we as humans always try to strive to create an existence for ourselves with the least suffering possible, right?
Yeah.
But when you think about it, suffering is kind of a part of life in a way that you can't remove it from life, because like when you think of how we created it or created, we were created through suffering, like the process of evolution. I mean, when you just think about it, how much death had to um like how many people had to die in order for you to have the form that you have. Like all of the
Yeah.
forms that weren't fit enough for survival. They gave
Yeah.
you your hands, your feet, your eyes. There's
Yeah.
just iteration after iteration after iteration of
It's
things
so
not being
fast.
able to
Yeah, it's so fascinating to think about, like, all the species that evolution did not select for and that went extinct, and we're lucky enough to be one of the species that evolution did select for. And for us to be here right now, we have to have had a long line of ancestors going as far back as life itself on the planet Earth, like the single-celled organisms evolved, and then eventually there were sea creatures, and then eventually there were the first ones who walked on 4 legs, and then there eventually were all of the, like, I'm really oversimplifying evolution here, obviously, but eventually there were all the ape species and stuff like that, and then through literally billions of years that led to our existence right now. It's so, like, mind-blowing to think
I
about.
know. Like sometimes you can look at the numbers of a war, right? Like millions of people died in some war or something, but like that's nothing compared to what it took to create you.
Yeah, for sure.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, oh man, just that makes me think about science fiction too. Like, for example, like, if we're just talking, like, just about science fiction, think about the possibility that we are living in a simulation like the Matrix. Like, I know it's probably a slightly ridiculous idea, but it's interesting to think about. It's interesting to think about too. Like, if we're living in a simulation, was evolution a part of it? And how fucking complex is it to design something like evolution? And I like what you were saying about suffering too. That's also a pretty Buddhist idea, about how suffering is a part of life, and especially
Yeah,
in
it's true.
some types of Buddhism, it's about, like, embracing suffering. And it's interesting too, because we do, like you said, we seek pleasure, and I think it's good to have pleasure in life, but then you need some discipline and hardship and suffering too. So it's like that's why I've been thinking about making this video lately called discipline or pleasure. How about both? Because I like I
I
like
like
both
that. It's
advocates
a
of
good
discipline and advocates of pleasure, but they can both get carried away. Like, yes, discipline is very important, and suffering is pretty much a necessary part of life. And if you pursue a goal that leads to happiness because it gives you a sense of accomplishment, but there's a huge problem with workaholism in our culture, and I know that all too well because I have problems with workaholism myself too. But and so it's important to have just pleasure for the pursuit of pleasure, and I try to remind myself of that. But then obviously there are other people, and probably everyone at certain times of their life, they get too hedonistic and they need more suffering and discipline in their life.
Yeah, that's true. I almost remembering. I think it was from a Joe Rogan podcast that or I don't remember where I saw it actually, but someone who decided who had that idea, but like he was thinking like everyone is always trying to innovate and try to make new things by that will make human life easier. But this one
Yeah.
guy decided to make a difference and innovate something new by making life harder because he thinks nobody's doing that enough because everyone wants the easy things and like he's saying like hardship or not so much hardship but like challenges
Also,
are good for you.
what did this guy do that Joe Rogan was
What
talking
was I'm
to?
trying to remember. I don't remember very well. I think it was like an app or something.
Oh, okay.
Hello, you still there?
Oh,
Or
yeah, I just
oh,
turned off my camera while I get some more coffee.
oh okay.
Yeah,
Um,
but it was like an app
I
or
think it was
something?
some like an app or something. I don't remember very well. I would have to look it up. But like it was basically they were talking about the philosophy of like having discipline and like going through hard things that'll make you kind of like a stoic idea
Oh,
that
yeah.
you when you have to face something hard you embrace it and sometimes you even seek it you seek hardship because it makes you a tougher person it makes the good times better basically.
Yeah, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Like, I don't know if you saw my last podcast episode was with Bill Ferriolo, who I've talked to once before, who's a professor of philosophy at San Joaquin Delta College in California, and he's a big fan of Stoicism. And obviously, Stoicism is one of my favorite realms of philosophy that I've done a little bit of investigating into, and we talked about Stoicism and how cynicism led into it. And we also talked about postmodernism and pragmatism too. But yeah, that's one of the things I like about Stoicism too. It talks about how, especially some types of Stoicism, like Bill Ferriolo's book, Meditations on Self-Discipline is Failure. And failure is really cool because it's like just him giving like tough talk to people because it's a way that he's talked to himself in a way basically like we sometimes we just complain about shit too much and we need to be told, listen bitch, shut the fuck up and do some hard work and you'll feel
Yeah.
better. And that's often true too, like you mentioned Joe Rogan, who obviously we both love, and he talks all the time on his podcast about how if he just relaxes and puts his feet up and gets baked and watch TV all day, he just feels unhappy. But if he really truly relaxes after a day of working really hard, he appreciates it so much more, right?
Yeah, that is so true. It feels so good to relax after you do a lot of hard work. Like it's the best feeling. It just feels right. Like if you
Yeah.
just kind of do, if you relax when you didn't do anything, you kind of you just feel like kind of like I don't know. You just feel like shit. Like it doesn't feel good. So
Yeah.
it's important, yeah. Even in the small things, like a day-to-day actions they do, like clean your room or something, you can actually feel the important effects of like the balance of like hardship and pleasure.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure, man.
Yeah.
Like when I just take a day off, deliberately take a day off and do nothing that I plan, I do it deliberately for my own sanity, so I don't just like work too hard every single day. But still, usually on those days, I don't appreciate them as much as every other day when I work really hard for most of the day, and then at the end of the day, I have a really profound state of relaxation in comparison to the day when I don't accomplish anything, because I appreciate that rewarding feeling of having worked hard and accomplishing and accomplished things like you were saying.
Yeah, definitely. Who I'm a big fan of also, who thinks like that also. You probably have heard of him. You know David Goggins. He was on.
No, the name sounds familiar. I don't think I know about
Oh,
him though.
what? I'm surprised he didn't. You. I feel like you would have heard of him. He was on Joe Rogan, but like he's got a story about basically his philosophy is basically do something that sucks every day, and that's like one of his slogans. Like it's
Oh,
like
that's a good idea.
yeah, he's a kind of a motivational speaker, but like his story is that like when he was younger, he was like really fat, and he was kind of like he saw himself as kind of pathetic. He didn't like who he was. He was going nowhere in life, and then he saw a commercial for I think it was like an army commercial, and he was going through some stuff. So like that commercial just hit him, and he started training. He started like weightlifting, lost all his weight until eventually he became he did the he was able to do the U.S. Navy SEAL Hell Week, and he did it I think 3 times
Oh wow, that's
from
awesome,
being like
man.
nobody, like a fat guy who's getting older, and
That's
like out
awesome,
of like
man.
yeah, it's crazy. Out of like 1 or 200 people that do that test, usually it's like 1 or 2 people that actually make it to the end, and he finished 3 times.
Oh wow, so like 1% or so.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Wow.
Like in the whole week, you only get like 4 hours of sleep, and then you have to face like hypothermia, like heat exhaustion, all this crazy like physical punishment that they make you go through to see if you're strong enough to go like on the other side.
That's fucking
But
insane, man.
I know it's
Those inspirational stories like that are so awesome though. Like
you
I think
should
it was
switch him out. I love
yeah,
him.
for
Like he's
sure,
actually
man.
such a he's an inspirational guy. And another one of his big accomplishments was like he was going to run a marathon for a cause or something like a racer or something like that. Something important. It was for a cause, but it was like an elite marathon, right? So because he was an elite runner, he didn't have like awards or anything. He was a bodybuilder. You know, bodybuilders are slow.
Yeah.
They're
I
not
was
runners.
like I started off as like a really amateur bodybuilder in high school before I got into powerlifting.
Yeah, yeah. But like they gave him a challenge. Like if you want to get into the race, if you want to just like qualify, you have to do the challenge of running 100 miles in 24 hours.
Holy shit.
Yeah, and then he started training and training, and then like he started well, on the day of the run, like he did the whole 24 hours running, like just constant running, and
Just running for 24 hours straight?
24 hours, yeah, only
Holy
stopping
shit,
for
man.
like to like take a piss and stuff. By the end
Wow.
of the thing, he had he had broken his shins. His shins were fractured,
Oh shit.
and he taped them up to make sure he could keep running.
Holy
He
fuck, man.
he was like he was pissing blood. That's how
Holy
intense
shit,
it was.
man. That's like discipline to a fault, man.
Yeah, I know the guy's crazy,
Holy
and
shit.
yeah, like he literally almost died from doing that, and
Wow.
he made the run. He actually pulled it off. He ran 100 miles,
Wow.
and yeah, like there was a he's like telling a story where he sat down to eat like a sandwich or something, and then he tried to get back up and he couldn't, and his wife was there, and he was like she held his hands to help him up, and he was like almost like learning to walk,
Oh, wow.
and he just couldn't walk, and he started like after he was able to walk and take like a few steps, like I can't remember kind of like it's too much, but like he warmed up to it and then just started kept running and ran like the rest of like I don't know how many more miles he had to go.
Holy shit, man.
This guy's intense.
Man, I mean, like, I have a lot of discipline myself, but if I if I tried to get up and couldn't get up, I would quit at that point, man. Holy shit.
Yeah, no. Because that's the thing, he had something writing in it, and he thinks like when you put yourself in a position where you have to succeed or else you lose something very significant, you succeed. Like you
Yeah,
end up making it again.
yeah, for sure. Stakes make it like really way easier to succeed.
Yeah. I think that was in the Art of War somewhere.
Oh,
I still have to read it, but I want to read it. Or
oh
like,
yeah, I love that book.
have you read
It's
it?
been a little while since I've read it, but I remember it being just as awesome as I expected when I did read it. It's really
Yeah,
short too. It's easy to read quickly.
yeah. Yeah, it's really cool. But like, yeah, it's like the same idea which you could apply in real life in the same way. Um, if you want your troops to like actually be very effective, you put them in a place where their only escape is to actually win.
Mm.
I love that analogy, like that thought. It's like that's so true in so many aspects of life. Like
Yeah,
I bet if you were to be running 100 miles in 24 hours for no reason, for like oh let me just prove I can, it would have probably been harder, but like he probably wouldn't done it. But he had he was like riding a cause on it, so it's important.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and he couldn't fail basically.
yeah, for
So yeah,
sure,
that
man.
applies. The type
It
of stuff
shows
applies to like
that shows
daily.
like the power of the human mind to motivate ourselves when we have to. That's why I was talking recently too about how and I mean I always try to avoid getting judgmental about this because I know that I instantly am sometimes, and I try to not be a dick to people about it, but I'm generally as a pretty nice guy anyway. But you know, some people think that they can't consistently work out, and like stories like that show that anyone can if they actually are physically capable, which the majority of people are. And yeah, people have busy lives for sure. There are like for example, single mothers with 3 kids and 3 jobs or something like that. It can be really difficult to find time to work out, but it's just about making it a habit and doing it at the same it, not even necessarily at the same time every day, but at the same time every day, or at the same point of your schedule every day. Like, I don't know, when you get a
Yeah,
I
anything
used
is
to do it.
possible.
Sorry?
Anything is possible. You just like put your mind to it.
Yeah, yeah, I love that
If
mentality, man.
if your life depended on it, you'd figure out a way.
Yeah,
So like
exactly.
if that's the case, then you can't give any like unless your life depended on it and you know you're about to die because you can't do anything about it, then you have no excuses.
Yeah, pretty much, man.
You can do anything, but it is
Yeah,
hard. It's like it's time. Time is a resource. So like it depends on your priorities.
yeah, for
But if
sure.
it's if anything, if whatever is like that important to you, you can't make excuses. Like you gotta find out a way.
Yeah. Yeah, that inspirational story about David Goggins that you were talking about, that reminded me of Kevin Smith too, and how he like his health was so bad that he had a heart attack, and then since then he's lost so much fucking weight too, right? Like he almost looks like a different person because of so much weight he lost. And did you watch the recent Joe Rogan podcast with him?
With say
With
again, with who?
with Kevin Smith.
Kevin Smith? No, I haven't.
Yeah. Oh, do you not know who Kevin Smith is?
No, I'm not familiar with him.
Oh, okay. He directed lots of movies like Clerks and Dogma and Zack and Miri Make a Porno. So
Oh yeah.
yeah. So but he was like really fat and out of shape, and he had a heart attack recently right before he was doing the second of two stand-up comedy shows in a row, because he started doing that more recently too, and
Mhm.
he went to the hospital because he had a heart attack. And then after that, that was the thing that motivated him to start losing some weight and getting healthier. And I think he said, I forget where I heard this from, but I think he got a treadmill desk and started just walking on his treadmill while he does his work, or he still walks his dog uphill every day. So that's a good place to start. And I think he mostly lost so much weight from changing his diet. He was talking on Joe Rogan's podcast about these weird diets that he tried. Like he said he didn't think it was going to work, but at first he started eating only potatoes, only baked potatoes with nothing on them for 2 weeks. And he thought it was
Yeah,
insane,
sounds
but
so
he was
good.
like, fuck it, man, I'll try anything. So he did that, and he lost a bunch of weight in 2 weeks just doing that, which I think might mostly be because he cut out all of his junk food and lower calories overall. But regardless, obviously it worked. And then he's
Yeah, healthy.
gradually transitioned to more of like a vegan diet or something like that. And I mean, I don't follow that diet myself, but if it works for him, then that's fucking great. If it works for anyone, that's fucking great. So
Yeah.
it's awesome that he's done that for himself, I think.
Yeah, it's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love stories of people when they turn around like that and they just kind of they fix something that's just it's usually because like their mentality doesn't let them.
Yeah.
'Cause they go on fat or on lazy, I don't wanna and then they end up having like I don't know an epiphany or something and so yeah. Those stories are always inspirational.
Yeah. For sure, man. And yeah, like you were saying, it can we can I think we all probably at one point or another in our lives we get stuck in a rut about one particular thing, like whether it's working out or I don't know, one that I've had trouble with before is getting jaded about dating, for example, because we, like our flaws become part of our identity, so it becomes difficult to imagine changing our bad habits, or changing our habits that we at least don't like, because they become a part of our identity. So it's much more difficult to psychologically get through the idea of improving our entire identity than just improving one particular habit, I think.
Yeah, I think it does take a bit of changing yourself. You know, so one thing I've just learned to I don't know, through experience is like even if you feel let's say you feel like bad about something or just like you don't have the mental energy to do it. That's that's bullshit, but it's not either. It's not also like well I'm just gonna do it and I just get done. Like I'm not just gonna start going to the gym tomorrow every day
Yeah,
like on the one like that doesn't happen. That's not the way to approach it. Thing is,
yeah,
your brain can adapt to anything. You can become, in theory, you could become David Goggins yourself.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
all
for
about
sure,
training
man.
your mind because your mind, like the human brain, is plastic. Like you can learn any skill. You can even emotions are skills. Like your intelligence is a skill. Your beliefs can be changed by if you practice like your opinions and stuff like all these things. Like your brain is like what do you call it? Like Play-Doh, you could turn it into anything. So of course you
Yeah,
can change it into like what one a badass that wants to like work out every day.
Yeah.
Like you have to know how to change your mind. That's the first
Yeah.
step. You know how to change your mind, and then you start
Yeah,
changing
for sure,
whatever else.
man. Yeah, yeah. I like what you said there. Like for one thing, like you were saying, people like if they, for example, if they don't work out and they're out of shape and they want to work out, you should do it. It's Are you
Right.
getting cold right now?
Yeah,
Oh,
no.
okay. Okay. It's about like making gradual progress. Like you can't just go from not working out at all to running a marathon the next day. You should make gradual process progress. Like go for a walk and then maybe go for a jog and then maybe go for a longer jog. Or if you want to lift weights, maybe start off with doing squats or deadlifts with just the barbell and then move up and increase the weight from there gradually, or just start off working out once a week and do that for like 6 weeks and then work out twice a week and then go up to however many days a week you want. And yeah, like you can totally change yourself too if you want to. Like I think you and I both have in a few similar ways and a few different ways. Like for me, for example, both physically and in terms of my beliefs, I've changed a lot. Like I was just a really small, skinny kid for most of my life. And then eventually I started going to the gym. And then eventually I started powerlifting. And I eventually became a huge, jacked powerlifter for a while. And then
Yeah.
eventually I stopped competing in powerlifting and lost more weight. And now I'm not as jacked as I used to be, but I'm not as skinny either because I kept well, I mean, I'm not like a scrawny little kid as much as I used to be anyway, because I kept up the habit of working out and I follow a healthier diet and stuff like that too. And then in terms of beliefs, one of the ways that I think we've talked about before in which we're kind of similar is that I used to be a militant atheist, which was at first because, well, I guess to how much I've changed in like three different ways, at least for that too, because I grew up Christian, raised by ministers, and then I eventually lost my faith and became an agnostic, then became an atheist, then I became a militant atheist for a while, and now I try to be much more of a friendly and open-minded and accepting atheist because I just think that not everyone has to believe what I believe, and for some people, religion works for them better than atheism, so that's fine. And then also, because I was defending religion so much, some people thought that I was an agnostic and were saying, and were kind of like saying or implying that all atheists seem the same. But so I tried to make that distinction with one of my blogs that I wrote recently, where I was saying that. So now I've come to the point where, regardless of whether you're religious or you're an atheist, it's more about how you interpret that religion or lack thereof with your individual psychology and your environment and how you interact with people. Like, look, putting all of these people into one category is just tribal and it's not that useful, I think.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
I don't know. Everyone's looks like you've had a few like turns of of your opinion in terms of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to be very militant atheist kind of person at one point. Also, when I stopped being religious, I saw like I don't know. I just kind of felt like I was supposed to go around like telling people the news. Like, have you heard the good news? Or
Yeah.
something like
Yeah, I
that.
did that too. I did that
Yeah,
too
but like
sometimes.
I started realizing like a lot of uh I guess I felt like a lot of the people that I was following, or I was falling into follow oh sorry yeah falling into kind of like a stereotype with people who were kind of similar minded, and I found it almost like they were religious in a way,
Mm-hmm.
but not it was not religion, but it's kind of like it in the same way how they had
Yeah.
wanted to like convert everybody and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I started to back off of that because I'm like, I don't see like what's the point? Like you can't just do that. I think everyone should have freedom to believe whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure, man. Like exactly like you were saying, like people like sometimes atheists can be more ideological about their atheism than religious people are about their religion. Like there can be religious people who label themselves as any type of religious, like Christian or Muslim or Buddhist or anything like that, but maybe they don't try to what's that word, proselytize
Proselytize?
proselytize
It's a weird word.
their religion throughout every single person they meet, and they don't think that everyone has to follow their religion in the same way that atheists can get that way too and think that everyone should be an atheist. It's like people get so tribal about it, like I was saying, like that's why I get annoyed by both religious people and atheists who say, for the religious people, some of them say that the world needs religion, and we can't, and everyone, and not only that, but everyone has to be religious. And I always try to bring up the point that, look, you don't have to be religious. It just works better for some people than other people. For some people, it's really useful, and that's great, and they should be religious. But for other people, it doesn't work as well, and they don't need it. And by the same token, atheists might say, no, religion's fucking bullshit. Let's get rid of it entirely. Everyone is better off without it. But that's fucking bullshit too, because some people like I said, do better with religion than they do without religion. So it's not about one or the other. It's about what works for you.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Like, I feel like a lot of especially who like religious or non-religious people don't really understand what religion means to religious people.
Yeah.
And I guess I mean it all goes to like what it means to be conservative, which is basically they're more responsive to emotional um emotional stimulus, and they do tend to be less logical in a way. Although I'm not like I mean in a bad way, but the emotional aspect for religious people is so significant, and a lot of like atheists don't understand that.
Yeah.
And I realize it's a big deal for them. It's like when they when they have experiences that are like so profound for them that they can swear is real. It's almost for them it's absurd to think no, it's some chemical or whatever. It's like
Yeah.
they feel like Jesus touched them or whatever. But like to them it's real. Like it's like I was saying this analogy. I was talking to my girlfriend about this the other day. It's like um if you had if you had your parents, you know how you feel towards your parents. You had like compassion and love for your parents or your family or whoever you do.
Yeah.
And if you somehow realize or came to the realization that if it was like I don't even know what an example would be, but if you were to discover that those people that you felt that were not real people, like if it was all an illusion or you're like psychotic or something, like oh it turns out I have like a mental disorder and these people never existed, but you felt that, right? So that's
Yeah.
a big impact on you. It's like how can like you just go to saying like it's not real.
Yeah.
Where do
Oh,
you go
that's
with
a
the
great
faith?
analogy.
Yeah, and that's what it's like for religious people. Like when they feel like a lot of people, I've known a lot of people because I've been in the church a lot. I've known a lot of people who have had experiences where they feel like they could be in the presence of God or something. And I don't think there's any logical explanation for that, for it being true. But I do understand that experience is so real to them that it's hard for them to conclude that it's not real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah, like you said, it can be really emotional. Like that's why I've said many times before that to me, faith is an emotion. it's an emotion that I don't share with people anymore, and that's fine. Whatever works for you is fine, but that there's that aspect too. Like if it, like we were talking about earlier, also obviously your beliefs, your religious beliefs, or even your atheist beliefs can become part of your identity, and then like you said, there's not necessarily anything logical about particularly like the supernatural religious beliefs. So you rationalize them because human brains are really fucking amazing at rationalizing things and making them seem logical regardless of what we're talking about. Even if it's like a militant atheist position, like some of the militant atheist positions aren't really that logical either, and anything can seem logical. That's what, like, since we're so good at rationalizing things, that's why anything can seem logical according to a particular mindset. So if you're Christian, for example, you can rationalize, if you believe in the really spiritual claims, which some religious people don't, you can rationalize those beliefs and make them seem logical because you're basing it on a feeling. But that's because that's how all humans behave. We don't behave logically or rationally. We rationalize our intuitions and go from there. So it's like an inevitable way that humans behave, basically.
Yeah, one part of the paper that human decision making is like 90% emotional based and like 10% logic, which
Yeah.
was like pretty mind blowing. It was like um, it doesn't feel that way. You think you're rational about every decision you're making. It's not. Like we're still very emotional creatures
Hmm.
fundamentally, but our higher mind, like the neocortex, is such a small part of our brain when you think about it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was just thinking about. It's like the newest part of our brain, evolutionarily
Yeah, it literally
speaking, by
means
far
new
too,
brain,
right? Yeah,
neocortex.
yeah.
Yeah,
So who knows? Maybe in the future, humans will be run by reason more than emotion. But I think that's a very long way off. Like
big
perhaps
spot.
at least hundreds of thousands of years, if not millions of years, if that ever will happen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So would that be a beneficial thing though? Like,
I don't think it would, man.
no.
Yeah, I think if we, I think like, I think both polar opposite possibilities are probably just as bad of an idea. Like you can get too emotional about things and then it can cause you to make just ridiculous decisions and destroy your life. But you can definitely get too rational and base things on logic too much and not consider human emotions, like you were just talking about with the example of religions. And it could be like, for example, an excuse for an atheist to cause a mass genocide for all religious people or something like that. So, and I mean, there are countless examples that you could think of both of those possibilities. So I think that like both reason and emotion are important aspects of human psychology in a way, right?
Yeah, that's true. And I think in terms of evolution, I think logic tends to benefit like people collectively. So that like when it comes to collectivism, evolution doesn't really work that way unless you're dealing with the species level. But like even okay, like take sustainability for example. We made this rational observation that if we keep behaving these ways, we're literally just gonna destroy our entire species and a bunch of other species already. Even though that's a completely logical the conclusion, nobody really follows it because they're we're not driven by logic like we think we are. But even if we evolve, like how would you evolve to be able to take knowledge like that and act on it like on a deeper like mental level? Like, well, how would you evolve that, right? Like you couldn't because we're not dealing with the selection pressures that take away a portion of the a weaker portion of the population. We're dealing with the entire population because it's a collective thing. Either we all get our shit together or we are all gonna die.
Yeah, that's a really interesting and important point, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Like
I feel like there's no real evolutionary pressure for us to become these higher logical creatures.
that's a really important point, man. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's one of the reasons why I'm not a militant atheist anymore, because I don't think that rationalism is the best path to a future. I think it's like, in a way, at least I would say at least agreeing, at least tolerating each other enough to exist with each other in the world and help try to create a better world while minimizing the rate at which we harm each other, because we're probably always going to at least harm each other minimally. But if we can reduce that as much as possible and get to a place where we can think differently but tolerate our differences, then maybe exactly what you were saying, maybe that's a much better idea.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy to think of.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
even the way we have kids, right? Well, I guess not so much anymore because of just the way culturally the way the Western societies are have become, where they have less kids. But I mean, we're just populating the crap of this world, right? Nobody ever thinks of like, whenever you're deciding whether you're gonna have kids, like the typical person, if you're gonna decide, are they really thinking like, oh, what about the percentage of or whatever, or some statistic, or nobody thinks that, right? Like
Yeah.
we're not like that. We're not these creatures. Fundamentally, we're just like every other creature in that we evolve. Even like bacteria, we have something in common with bacteria, and that's that we came into existence because of evolution. Therefore, we follow certain patterns, just like everything else. I mean, one of those patterns is when we have resources available, we'll consume them until those resources, um, like we hit the boundary, right? So no amount of evolution or logical thinking is gonna overcome this visceral um, behavior that is basically ingrained in our own evolution or the evolution of everything, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah, no, yeah, that's an important point for sure. I was just thinking about, though, like in terms of overpopulation, I think that is still probably, because almost regardless of what we do, even if it happens slowly, the population will probably keep increasing. But I've heard a lot of interesting arguments, like a TED Talk I watched, for example, where this guy, I forget what his name is, maybe Hans Rosling, was talking about how there isn't as much of a food and resource shortage in the world as a lot of people claim. It's more of an allocation of resource or
yeah,
distribution of resources problem. So there are lots of resources and food. We just need to distribute them better. So that could be one way to at least attempt to solve that problem for the nearer future rather than the farther away future. And then also, I think I heard, I forget who it was, I heard or saw talking about this, but they were saying that, oh yeah, yeah, it was Michael Shermer, that skeptic. I think he was talking on a Joe Rogan podcast about how the reason you don't see a lot of studies and articles about the projections for population growth after the year about 2150 to, no, 2050 to 2100, is that it's expected, even if you look at the statistics today, apparently, if I remember correctly, to drop off around that time. Like, I think it's maybe, I could be totally wrong about this, but I think it's expected to kind of like plateau and then maybe even drop off at around 10 billion or something like that. And then also, I mean, I could, like I said, I could be wrong about that number, but And then also, like you were saying, since our culture, especially our modern Western culture, has changed from the in comparison to the way it used to be, people are having less children than they used to. So I guess the population is still increasing because people still are having children, of course, and then we need more resources for these more people. But I think that people are having, like you said, less children than they used to, and because one of the ways that our culture has changed is that women women are in the workforce more than they used to be, so they're less likely to become mothers, and then people are so partially because of this, people in general are having families less and having children less, or at least having children at a later age. So, and like one of the things that used to happen too before modern medicine, for example, is that people would just have as many children as possible because a lot of them would die from medical complications and stuff like that. And because of modern medicine, people are doing that less. Although, in spite of that, of course, the population still was increasing for a while anyway. But yeah, I think like I mean, obviously, no one can say for sure what's going to happen in the future, and maybe population growth will be a serious problem that we really need to devote more attention to or something like that. But I think it might be, and I kind of have this kind of in the middle or centrist perspective about anything anyway, so maybe that's my bias,
Yeah,
but
I've noticed
I think that it
that.
might be a problem, but maybe not as severe as people say.
I mean, if you think about it, no matter how much innovation there's gonna be, I mean, we're gonna hit a roof. Like it's inevitable. It's just like this is physics, right? Like you can't like the planet only has so many resources. You can't feed an infinite number of people.
Yeah,
So there will be, even if we're like next level high tech civilization, if we just keep reproducing, we're still gonna starve to death until our population plateaus because we're fundamentally at the limits of the resources available.
maybe that's why Elon Musk wants to colonize Mars.
Hmm. Yeah, that brings up a whole nother point. If we start colonizing space, there's basically an unlimited amount of resources in space. That's another thing, because I mean, when you think of space, usually you think of like meteors being this bunch of empty rocks and just floating there, and Earth being a lot bigger than what's out there. But it's actually the other way around. Like Earth is a tiny little bubble with all of its resource and everything compared to what's out there, like in
Yeah.
space. If we can start colonizing all the stuff that's in space, our population can potentially grow to trillions,
Yeah.
even within our local um, solar system.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for
Crazy.
sure, man. That's fascinating to think about. And
Yeah,
yeah, that makes me and I think I've heard Neil deGrasse Tyson talk before about how there are lots of asteroids out there that are close by that are filled with resources of in different minerals that we could mine for energy too. And then we can of course, as far as I understand, the more renewable energy sources are not as effective now, but we could make more renewable, but we could design them better, and people are already doing that, like with solar power and stuff like that. But then
yeah,
also, like, yeah, that makes me think of science fiction, like Isaac
yeah.
Asimov
It goes
novels,
back
for
to science
example, like
fiction.
in the Foundation books, a series by Isaac Asimov. It's so fascinating. It's a story over several books that takes place over like 1,000 years, and it's in it starts at the future already, where the human population is already trillions, but then they colonize so many other planets that they now live in multiple different galaxies too. So who knows, maybe that'll end up happening in the future too, if the human race survives long enough for that to
Yeah,
happen.
it's all a numbers game. When you think about it,
Yeah.
the more people there are, the more chances. Each person is basically an experiment, and if you run enough of them, you'll find unlikely things happen.
Yeah,
So
that's a good way of putting
that's
it.
what you think about it. Because like right now we're just like in this bubble on this planet, right? So if we screw this up, we're done. That's the end of it. But if we start colonizing other planets in space, there's plenty of resources in space, like more than on Earth, like orders of magnitude more. So yeah, if we get populations are big enough, like eventually a colony somewhere is likely to end up colonizing some other place, some other star system or something. Because even if we were to think of it from Earth, if we start doing stuff like that from Earth, like it's still a long shot. Like
Yeah,
it's very unlikely that we get to another star system if
yeah,
with the amount of
yeah,
resources it takes and also just the dedication because it's basically our civilization investing in something that won't return until we're dead. So we're not getting anything out of it, and it's still a huge like project. I mean, building a interstellar space ship or something, right? It's,
yeah, yeah, for sure,
so it's
man.
more likely than not that it won't happen. Just because
Yeah,
it's not economically feasible.
yeah. Like
But if you have
how
enough
far?
people, it's more likely. Like anything.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I think you're right about that. Like, how far away is Andromeda, which is the nearest galaxy? Isn't it so far away that that even that is almost impossible for the human mind to fathom?
Yeah, it's pretty far, but compared to the other galaxies, it's like nothing. Let me just search. Yeah, it says it's 2.5 million light years away.
That's a
Our
long fucking
galaxy
way.
is 10,000 light years, so that's
Oh, wow. Holy shit.
kind
Yeah.
of
See, think about 2.5 million light years away in comparison to the total size of our galaxy, 10,000 light years or so. That's like that's a phenomenally large difference.
yeah. It's like, what is it like 200 times more, almost maybe a little more.
Wow.
Yeah, but it's so cool because like I mean in the sky in the night sky Andromeda is pretty big. Like it's about like 4 times as big as the moon or something like that.
Oh, I
But
didn't
if you
know that.
stretch your hand out, you can't see it because of like light pollution and everything. But if you stretch your hand out and open it, Andromeda basically fits like in your hand.
Oh, that's
It's
so
pretty big,
cool.
but it's just really dark, so you can't see it. It just looks like a
Um,
star. Where you see the core, looks like a star, but the rest of it is it's very faint. But it's there.
oh, okay. Oh, that's so cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
you need probably if you had like a high exposure camera, you could get a really beautiful photo of the galaxy just like right next to like the trees or wherever.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah,
It's so cool that we can capture that even though it's so fucking far away. That's
I
awesome.
know. It's so cool. Or even the thought that you can potentially get there, or the light travel that distance and got to you.
Yeah. Man, I mean,
Yeah.
it does seem phenomenally unlikely, and it would be amazing if we could, and it's fascinating to think about. But even if we end up staying in this galaxy forever, I mean, even our galaxy is a big fucking place with, like you said, lots of resources that can be used and
I
lots of
didn't even
different
think we
planets
need to
too.
go to another galaxy. Like our
Yeah,
galaxy is reset.
yeah. Like, I think I've heard from astrophysicists before too talk about how, we're aware of the different planets in our solar system, but there's even a really extremely large amount of space between the different planets too, which we often don't think about.
Yeah, it's crazy to think like the amount of space that there's. Like you don't imagine that when you think of the other planets. You think they're just like right there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I don't know. Or even the stars, like the planets. I mean, you could build a scale model of the planets in like a stadium. But like the stars are even more mind blowing. Like the nearest star, if you have like a sun the size of like a tennis ball, it's like somewhere like in Texas or something. I think I read.
Oh,
Like
wow.
that's a scale. That's the nearest star. Not to
Wow.
mention the rest of the 100 billion other stars in our galaxy.
Yeah. That's just so hard to fucking fathom and even think about too. Like, that's so many fucking stars. And there are so many fucking more stars than there are planets. And just what stars themselves are is so fucking fascinating and amazing too.
Yeah, I've always loved space ever since I was a kid. Like I've been fascinated by it. It's like one of my interests ever since I was little.
Yeah, it is so
A lot of
fascinating.
family friends that said I was gonna be like an astronomer or something.
Oh yeah, that's so cool. Yeah, for a little while I thought about being an astronomer or even like being an astrophysicist if I was good enough at math. And I am working on my math skills and getting better at them, but I'm not that good at them. I'm not that good at them yet. And I found after that I found that being creative and writing and doing podcasts and stuff like this is what I prefer. And
Yeah,
yeah, with all this talk about stars and how amazing they are, you're making me want to rewatch Neil deGrasse Tyson's remake of Cosmos. It's so
yeah,
fascinating.
yeah. I love that show. It's like he really gets like the curiosity aspect of it. A lot of
Yeah,
people think it's boring, but he just shows how it's not. Like the passion he has for the topics and everything, the way he describes them, and he puts like an awe to everything. Like that's what I love
yeah.
about Cosmos.
Yeah, exactly. I can't even imagine being bored by that, man. Yeah, his passion makes everything so fascinating.
Yeah,
Like stars, just stars. They're these exploding balls of gas like unfathomably long ways away in the universe, and they're fucking enormous, and there are 100 billion of them in our galaxy alone, and when they die they become different options of things. Like I forget what it is exactly, like they can become white dwarfs or red dwarfs, and only one of them is bigger and one of them is smaller, and I don't remember whether it's the bigger or the smaller ones that become black holes. And black holes are fucking fascinating too, and they were so bizarre that people didn't think they existed at
yeah.
first, and
Like they saw
we
the
can't see them, and we only know that they exist because things get sucked into them, and because you can see the red shift of the light spectrum or something like that when things draw close to it. I don't remember exactly, but they're fucking fascinating.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
the bigger stars when they blow up. I like the analogy of the bouncing balls. So like if you take a basketball and a ping pong ball and you drop them, like the ping pong ball is gonna bounce off the basketball, and then it's gonna go flying like in the air,
Oh,
like
okay.
much higher. And it's because it's absorbing the basketball's kinetic energy, and it's so small, so that's a lot of energy for a small object. Which is the thing is like why stars explode. Basically, the core is where all the heavy stuff is, and then the outside is all like light, fluffy stuff like hydrogen and helium. So it starts like I think it's like pulsating, and then eventually kind of the core starts to turn to iron. So when iron fuses, it doesn't have the reaction. So the fusion reaction. So there's no more outward force. So everything starts falling in, and because it's so heavy, once it bounces back out, everything on the outside, the light fluffy stuff, it's kind of like the ping pong ball, and it just goes flying.
Oh, wow, that's a great analogy. That's so
Yeah,
fascinating.
and that compression is what caused the black hole because there's so much force in the middle, and everything starts collapsing.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. And I remember seeing Neil deGrasse Tyson talk about black holes too, how he was saying that there's what physicists call spaghettification that happens, and they theorize that as you as a human body gets closer to a black hole, it'll start to kind of like suck you into it, and it'll squish you and make your body more and more narrow and longer like spaghetti as you get closer to it, and it'll just warp your body and suck you into it, which is probably unimaginably painful. And then there are all sorts of really speculative and fascinating theories about what might be on the other side of black holes.
No, you know what's an ironic thing? According to the uh, general relativity, the bigger black holes are actually like chiller to fall into.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like it's the small ones that rip you to shreds, but the
Oh,
big ones take a
wow.
lot longer to rip you to shreds. So like in theory, if you can get like I don't know, like a colony or something, fly inside, if you orbit it and just get inside the black hole, you could basically live there for like millions of years before you actually get spaghettified.
Oh, wow,
Isn't
that's
that
fascinating.
crazy? Like
That is,
inside the black hole, not even the outside, but like actually inside the event horizon.
oh, wow, that's so cool.
You know,
Wow, I didn't know that. That's
the
so
little
awesome.
ones screw you up though.
Yeah. Oh, wow, that's that's interesting.
And yeah, because it's all about the gravitational gradients. So like on the smaller ones, like there's a much bigger gradient, so that's what causes you to be ripped apart. But in the big ones, like the supermassive black hole in the center of the galaxy, like the gravity between two very distant points is more or less the same. Like it's closer to each other than it would be on a smaller. So it's more stable for things.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that's oh yeah, so that's why is that why the supermassive black hole at the center of our galaxy, that's why it's relatively safe for our galaxy, it lasts at least for a long time?
Mm, well, that's more to do with the fact that things more tend to orbit the black hole as opposed to fall into it.
Oh,
So the whole
okay.
galaxy is basically happily going around it rather than going towards it. That's
Oh,
why everything's kind of just like around for a long time.
okay. Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
But the things that do fall inside of it, like they're still in there, like long after, even when they fall inside the event horizon, they're still like. Well, there's some theories that say no. Depends on how you look at it, but the the leading theories that say like it's still kind of orbiting on the inside, even though you can't see it. Like you did, the stuff there should be fine.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Okay, so since it's a super massive one, then things could fall in there and be, and including being during the time that they're in the event horizon, be there for like millions of years, you said, right?
Yeah,
Oh, wow. That's so cool. Huh.
yeah. Well, I always love the fact that um, the thing about the event horizon that I think is the most mind blowing thing is that when something goes inside of it, basically it goes its timeline gets split into two different timelines. Depends
Oh,
on
I forgot about that.
yeah, like the ones on the everything on the outside, what they see is something get frozen in time. So like because you're approaching a high gravity like environment, which causes your clock to go slower. But since
Oh,
it approaches infinity, your clock will actually slow down completely until you come to a stop. Like you're basically ticking. 1 second will last an eternity. So you're just there frozen, like plastered onto the surface. But to
oh,
that thing's
wow.
perspective, it goes right through, and
Oh,
it'll just
wow.
continue to exist, which is so
Wow.
weird.
That is so mind-boggling.
I
Yeah.
know, it's
That's
crazy.
a mindgasm and a half right there.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's like we think that in the way we exist in the world that time exists in this linear fashion that we think
Yeah,
it
no.
does. But then when you start learning about time from the perspective of astrophysics, you understand that it's like basically almost a human construct in a way, and you can manipulate it in so many ways that it's not necessarily inherently linear at all.
Yeah, it's completely different than what you experience.
Yeah,
It's almost like absurdly different. Like the way it actually works is just so like nothing you could ever imagine. Like you
yeah,
couldn't just sit in the chair and just like, oh, what if the universe works like that? Like, how would you even do that? Like you can't.
yeah, yeah, for
So
sure, man.
crazy.
It's so
You know,
fascinating to think about.
like you're sitting in a chair and you come to the conclusion. Oh, what if the world works in such a way that if that happened, you get split into two timelines? Like no one ever imagined that. I don't know how Einstein did it.
Yeah, I don't know, man. He was
Yeah,
such
no,
a fascinating thinker.
I know.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
It's so amazing, like how much he contributed to physics too. But then obviously, like he was just he was still just a human being too, so it's not like he was super special like a god or something either, like people say about him sometimes. So lots of people are capable, like we were talking about earlier, lots of people are, and almost everyone really is capable of amazing things. It's just about the power of the mind and what you believe you can do and how hard you try to achieve your particular goals if you decide on a goal.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But no, if you wanted to change like our understanding of the universe, can that be your goal?
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah, you put your mind to it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm always
Mhm.
just trying to get mindgasms myself and give other people mindgasms and be amazed by learning about as much as possible.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you know, you're so curious about like learning about everything.
yeah, everything for
Oh
sure. Yeah. And you and you are too, obviously, man. About I mean, like we didn't even think about specific topics this time, and look at how many fascinating subjects we
yeah. No,
discussed.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's true.
yeah,
Yeah, no, I got a lot of thoughts. There's like interesting concepts and stuff.
yeah, for sure.
I spend like that's my binging time when I'm like not doing anything. I basically just like try to learn about everything.
Yeah, me too, man. I spend large portions of every day doing that. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Um, hmm. Well, is there anything else you want to talk about, man? Because I've run out of other thoughts.
Yeah, I know. I don't know. Like, I don't know. I need any thoughts. What do you think?
Yeah.
I've been a lot into like AI, like honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, I was saying earlier, like
Yeah, it sounds like you said you've been learning about how it actually works, right? So,
yeah,
yeah, that's really interesting.
yeah. I was trying to read. I just started reading like this book about I don't know what it's called. It's an ebook, but it's just like technical stuff like how it works and everything.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and there's like it's funny how like the ideas kind of connect to each other. Like the ideas you can use to make something that does computer vision or something like that. You do like a few minor tweaks, and it's not too far away from something that will actually like a chatbot or something like
Oh,
that.
okay. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it'd be
Yeah,
so
that's
cool to understand how a chatbot works. Was wondering. Picture.
yeah. So that would be like a physical version of something like Alexi or I mean Alexa or Siri.
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, I bet we could do something like that in the future and just have someone follow us around and look up things for us.
Yeah,
And then maybe
that'd be cool.
and then that's why people speculate in science fiction about there just being AIs around doing things for us. That
Yeah,
would sure be nice if we had AI to do things for us. I
I
would
feel
like
like
having,
that's not too far away. Like that's almost doable.
yeah,
Yeah, you just need to like mess the probably.
it would sure be nice to have an AI researcher and assistant and maybe a chef or something like that too.
Chef, yeah. One thing I've always been like I hadn't really understood is like because there's different aspects of what AI can do. Like they can drive a car, or they can like identify things like visually, or you can have a conversation with a chatbot or something. And that's all pattern. Basically, fundamentally, it's all pattern recognition. Like
Right.
you're picking up patterns in data, and they learn the patterns, and then they can replicate the same patterns, right? But what I never understood, and I wonder like what progress there is in AI is what ability do they have to do like higher level thinking, kind of like when you think of a math problem and you have to like find a novel solution. Your brain is doing something, but it's not the same thing. Or as far as I'm concerned, it's not the same thing that it does when you're just trying to memorize patterns. So like when you learn to see
Oh,
or
so
drive or whatever.
you mean like
It's different.
there's more of a creative process perhaps with the
Yeah,
human
like
mind?
creativity, like fundamental creativity. Like what is that in terms of like how it works? Like I have no clue.
Right.
And I think also like that's I mean when you think of innovation, that's where innovation comes from, like from a human like
Yeah.
perspective. Yeah.
Yeah,
And we
for
create
sure.
like even AI itself. Like we created AI because we had ideas about what you could do with information.
Yeah.
What if you take this information and do this to it? And then you start learning the patterns. Maybe that might work. Let's try it out. Let's experiment. But you
Yeah.
can't create like can you create a system that does the same thing? That's what
Yeah.
I was wondering.
Yeah, for
Then you
sure.
end up with a loop, and then you pretty much have a thing that thinks about itself in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's an important point. That's why, like, for example, if we create AIs, if someone's worried about them destroying the world or something, maybe we can just have them analyze patterns and give us recommendations and not give them control of nuclear weapons and and
That
maybe
beats Trump, man. Like that's way better than Trump.
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, the way humans, I think the way they carry like politics, it's like, I think sometimes I don't know if this is biased, but I think like some kind of AI would do a way better job than any person can.
In a way that I mean, I don't know, it depends because it would depend on like whether they're actually the leader or whether they're advising the leader. Maybe like advising the leader would be a better idea because unless we get to a point where an AI could understand and empathize with human emotions, because I think that might be a roadblock otherwise if they were actually the leader and not just an advisory in an advisory position, because they might just make decisions based on analyzing that data and make logical decisions, but then they might not. I mean, sometimes maybe they would benefit humans more than the humans making these decisions, I bet, but maybe they wouldn't sometimes because of that potential roadblock with human emotion.
Yeah, potentially. So the thing is like, how do you tell an algorithm how humans like what humans want?
Yeah.
Like that's very difficult. That's a whole um Pandora's box of AI. That sometimes when you try to define a fitness function, it's like this is what I want you to do, and then you're expecting a certain result, but sometimes it comes to results in absurd ways that you're like, no,
Yeah.
that's not what I want at all. Although you take a loophole, they find loopholes, but sometimes they're hilarious.
Yeah.
And that's a dangerous that can happen with AI that you give enough power to like do things like that. Like if you put an AI in a political position, you might end up having, like I was saying earlier, you might end up having something that tries to find solutions by keeping everybody all high and like doped up on some drugs and
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah, that's
Like,
that's
that's
what I was
how
just
much now
thinking
you're
too.
happy, just like you asked, and now there's no more war. So like, what more do you want? And here's some drugs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I
There's-
was just thinking too, going back to like the Matrix idea, right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But like one of the the ways that you can teach a machine to like what humans want is by using what's called what's it called, non what's the word, when you're like observing like a child, what's it called, what's that word,
What do you mean?
when you're like observing a child, make sure that they behave.
Um, Parenting? I don't know.
I don't remember the word. No, it's not printing. It's like that you basically show the system what it like what you want it to learn, and it has to pick up on it on like what it wants to learn. So like if let's say
Oh, I mean
instead of telling,
demonstrating?
huh? Yeah, kind of like demonstrating, but
Okay.
like instead of teaching it like, oh, people like coffee, so coffee's good. Remember that. So next time or something, you just make it see people making coffee every morning. And then
Okay.
when it sees that every day, it concludes that, oh, maybe the people like coffee. Maybe I should make them coffee for them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that
I don't
could
know if
be a
you get
good
the
thing.
idea.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that like that could be one of the ways they like we were talking about that they could potentially help us a lot. Yeah, like
Yeah.
doing it like like I said earlier, like it would be nice to have an assistant doing administrative shit for me and maybe a chef, maybe someone, maybe a maid or someone or something like that doing all of my chores. That'd be nice
Like
too.
the Jetsons. I also thought that there would be nice to have all the dumb shit of life taken away. Like I don't need to worry about like doing my taxes or anything like that.
Yeah, that would be really
That'd be
nice,
pretty
man.
fun. I'd like that.
I'd like that too.
No more taxes.
Yeah. Who knows though? Maybe like we were talking about before, maybe that's an aspect of suffering that makes us better in a way ultimately. Who knows?
Yeah, that's a good counter argument to it. Yeah, because
Yeah.
if everything is easy and like you basically have all the time in the world, that's like you're gonna get anxious about stuff. Like you're gonna feel like I need a purpose.
Yeah.
And you have nothing to do.
Yeah. I mean, I think I could certainly fill it up with creative pursuits and learning, reading and writing and all that kind of stuff, but maybe if I didn't have other responsibilities and obligations, it would ultimately be bad for me too. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Like if I don't have work for a week, that's like my limit. Like after a week of not having anything to do, I start getting a bit anxious. I'm like, I need something to do. Because
Yeah.
I could spend like the whole week like learning or reading or whatever. But then yeah, I do get kind of weird about it after a while because I feel like I need to be putting my energy towards something or creating something, even if it's a creative pursuit. Like I love doing it. But like if I'm not doing anything, like if I had nothing to do at all because everything is done for me, I don't know how I would react to that either.
Yeah, that I mean that would probably suck
Yeah.
because then like like we were saying, like we were talking about earlier, like enjoyment is important and rewarding, but it's less tends to be anyway less rewarding if you do it not in combination with some discipline and suffering and hard work too. Like it's kind of a balancing equation almost.
Yeah.
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 It's interesting to think about, like, if we if we eventually do invent the AIs that we talk about, whether they would come up with these realizations themselves and realize that there should be a balance between discipline and pleasure, and there should be different balances for
Yeah,
each of us at
that's a good
different times in our
point.
lives. Yeah, yeah,
Like,
and different
can't
balances
really
for different
imagine
people.
that do so well if everything is done so.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
wouldn't that mean wouldn't they be able to conclude that they give us some bullshit job and lie to us about it? This is really important. Maybe they do this.
That's
But no, I
entirely
think it's not.
possible, man. That's a good point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
these things can outsmart us. Like if they get that smart.
And maybe outsmarting us would be a good thing in a way, in that sense.
Yeah, maybe singularity is good. Like bring it. Come on.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, who
What else
knows?
of that? Like what's so bad about these robots? Like the singularity thing.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the only potentially bad aspect of the singularity, if it happens, would be like we were just talking about, how we might become psychologically unhappy and unfulfilled if we live in some sort of utopia.
Yeah. But then, when if we're to get to that point, would we be able to Wouldn't we be able to just change our brains?
Yeah, who knows? Like like you were saying earlier, maybe we could just when we get to the point where I'm feeling anxious and depressed and angry. Oh, okay, just hit this button and that will stop.
Like there are technologies that literally do that,
Yeah?
like deep brain stimulation.
Oh,
There's a
okay.
surgery that actually is a treatment for depression, and it's so
Oh,
funny. I saw um, on TV one time where they were doing that, and there was the doctor was holding a button, and he was like saying like, "What do you feel?" And she switched the button on, and she stopped. She started laughing. Like really, like, and then the doctor switched it off, and she got all depressed like instantly.
oh wow.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Oh, that's so cool. I didn't know that. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
so that's literally like true what you just said.
Wow.
It's
That's
already well,
cool. So it's just a matter of getting it widespread to the point where this can happen all the time.
yeah,
And then but then, like, if we do that before we make AIs that do everything for us, maybe we'll just end up being too hedonistic and not accomplishing anything, because we can just make ourselves feel fulfilled without any accomplishing any sort of goals.
yeah. But can you feel fulfilled while needing to accomplish things? Or I think that
You could
drives
make
us.
yourself feel fulfilled.
But then you starve to death.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I
Like
guess.
I would feel pretty fulfilled if I'm about to die.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I got 3 more minutes to feel fulfilled, and then I'm gonna
I wonder if in the same way that you could perhaps make yourself feel fulfilled without accomplishing anything. I wonder if in the same way you could make yourself feel full when you're hungry. But I mean, even if you did that, you would still die from hunger while feeling full or something like
yeah,
that.
exactly. So it's kind of a trap.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
I guess there's the two aspects of it. Make yourself happy and keep yourself alive.
Hmm.
But yeah, I always thought that's like the two most important things to technology can ever do for us. Like ever. Like
Yeah.
make
Yeah,
people happy
probably.
and make people live long.
Yeah, I would say so. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Or just keep yourself happy while the AI keep us alive.
Yeah,
That could
exactly.
work.
Yeah. Maybe that'll be, uh, who knows, like, maybe it'll be much more difficult if we reach that point and all we have to focus on is happiness, or maybe we'll organize societies around trying to enhance happiness because the AIs will have everything else taken care of us, and maybe that'll be functional rather. But yeah, I don't know. This is all really interesting to think about.
Yeah, there are ideas like that, like post-scarcity civilization. I don't know if you've heard of that.
No, I haven't.
It's basically okay. Our civilization is based on scarcity, which is counterintuitive because resources is what we need to keep going, right? But
Right.
our civilization doesn't run or isn't like based on resources. Actually, based on the scarcity of resources, which is a whole why money has a role. So when you have like if a company discovers oil or something, they wouldn't just give the oil to everybody for them to use. They instead keep the oil and give people as much as they need so that they can get something in return. And
Okay.
that paradigm basically means that our civilization is depriving itself of resources.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Like the allocation or distribution of resources problem that I was mentioning earlier, how that's more of a problem than the actual quantity of resources, at least for the time being.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. I mean, it seems like a good goal to try to get to that point, I would say.
Yeah, and there's a guy I forgot his name, but he's dead now. But like he gave his whole life to trying to realize this idea. And I don't know if you heard of the Andromeda project.
No, I haven't.
It's like it's his basically his brainchild. It's like we watch the Avengers, like
Which
the
one?
or not the Avengers, Iron Man, where his dad like he finds a movie with his dad's like trying to create like this utopia. Iron Man's dad.
Oh, yeah, yeah, I think
It's
so.
actually based on that guy.
Oh,
Because
really?
yeah, because that guy, I gotta look at his name. I don't remember his name. But he spent his entire life trying to realize or promote this idea of a new civilization that's post scarcity. It's called the Andromeda Project, and he had an idea of like these circular cities with like each town or like each neighborhood, like it's like everything is segmented. There's no more cars. Like everything is public transit. And in the center, his idea of that was that in the center was where all the productivity was, or like
Okay.
factories and everything, and everything was as automated as possible, and like resources would be like given to everybody and used for productivity, like as much as possible.
Oh,
So
okay.
instead of producing what we need and then or we do produce what we need, but like instead of like producing what we can sell according to supply and demand, uh, this central hub would basically produce everything that everybody needs, and then it'll give it out for free.
Oh, okay.
It's kind
Oh,
of
is that guy that you mentioned, Jacques Fresco, who was in he talks about the Andromeda Project and some of those Zeitgeist documentaries?
yeah, that's him. He was in the
Okay.
Zeitgeist
Yeah,
documentary.
okay, I remember that guy now. Yeah. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
interesting.
exactly. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's where I heard of him the first time actually. And
Okay.
like his whole idea was worked in theory, but I guess we'd have to give it a shot to see how it comes out.
Yeah. Yeah, we kind of have to like restructure societies to be able to make
From
that work.
scratch,
Yeah,
practically, yeah.
exactly.
But
Yeah.
it does sound like a good idea. I don't know.
It does, yeah. It
Utopic.
does sound like a good idea. It's just about, like you said, how we can accomplish that, I would say.
Yeah, like greed wouldn't be a thing apparently because everyone would have everything they need. They
Okay.
wouldn't need like more, and money wouldn't even exist.
Okay.
I don't know how that will work. According to like human psychology, it's feasible, but
Yeah,
it
especially
just
like
sounds.
getting rid of greed. I'm not sure you can do that.
Yeah, I think everybody would want a little bit more than everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah, probably.
There's people who want more.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, so like a lot of the things we've been talking about, they're really interesting theories and interesting to talk about more and more, but it's questionable how easy they are to achieve.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's kind of like communism.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's those are like actually common objections that I've heard before to those Zeitgeist movies, which actually helped highlight some of the flaws in them for me because they are really interesting documentaries, but then if you learn a little bit more about politics and economics and the way society is currently structured, like we were talking about, it makes it seem like these are, like we said, like we were just talking about, really fascinating theories and probably good ideas, but really extremely difficult to achieve and perhaps even difficult to maintain if we do achieve them.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
it's based in like an order that it's really fragile and it could collapse pretty easy. I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, man.
Hmm. Yeah. Who knows what'll happen in the future, man? We've been talking about so many things that could possibly influence how it turns out, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
Alright.
Sorry?
I think I gotta get going soon.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. That's cool, man. Yeah, we've been talking for longer than I expected too, so that's
Yeah, me
awesome.
too.
Yeah, I'm glad we talked about so many fascinating topics,
Yeah.
and yeah, I hope we can talk again sometime for sure, man. And yeah, thanks so much for talking to me as always. And so I'll say what I like to say at the end of all my videos here, and then you can give any plugs or anything you want to if you want to do that. All right. So yeah, so thanks everyone so much for watching another episode of the Mindgasms podcast. Hope you enjoyed watching it as much as and I think hopefully David too enjoyed having this conversation. And as I always say, thank you so much for everyone who has subscribed to my channel and to everyone who's contributed to me on Patreon. And thank you so fucking much to anyone else who subscribes to my channel and to anyone who contributes to me on Patreon. I really fucking appreciate it. It means a hell of a lot to me. And as I always say, I love you all. Keep being the tiny beam of light that shines through the almost impenetrable darkness in the universe. And as I always say, most importantly, always remember this: the funk cures all. All right. Keep having mindgasms, everyone. And you got any plugs or any last words there, David?
Uh, I know keep learning every day something new.
Learn every day.
Yeah.
That's a good closing message. Learn every day.
Learn every day.
All right. All
All
right.
right.
Keep having mindgasms, everyone, and adios until next time.